Guys, how are you today? I'm a big fan of both of yours, so it's an honor for me to be with you guys today.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks for joining us. I mean, when we look back at MMA over the last 20 years, it's never been here. I don't think we nationally realize it. Locally, we do. What has been the ultimate thing that's kept it out of New York?
It's funny. We're going to have to take it back to about 1993 when I first watched UFC 1. I was the chairman of the New York State Athletic Commission with all the power to bring in a sport like this or to ban it.
Yeah.
And I watched the first one from Colorado, and I watched the second one. And I'm sure you guys are buddies with him the way I am, Bruce Beck.
Yeah,
I love Bruce. He's awesome.
Yeah, well,
Great guy.
Bruce called me up and he said, "Hey, Commish, I'm going to be doing this UFC. Why don't you take a look at it?" And I said, "I already have a little idea, Bruce, but..." And he did the announcing with Jim Brown and Jeff Blotnick. And what I watched, remember, as a boxing guy, I'm used to keeping your feet on the ground, you throw punches, you duck punches, you block punches, and that's it. You don't use your elbows. Over the years, I mean, I have wrestled. I've done a little bit of kickboxing, so I'm for all those sports. I watched Muay Thai, but when I saw everything rolled into one, and I saw the guys on their feet, then grappling, taking the guy down. But back then, there were basically no rules. And two of the rules that absolutely horrified me, or if they weren't rules, they were just, it was stuff that was allowed, was if a fighter was down, the fighter who was standing could drop what you call a 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock elbow, which is, you might as well be hitting a guy with a hammer.
Yeah.
The elbow is a lethal weapon. And when I saw that, and when I saw a downed fighter taking a kick to the head, which is called a soccer-style kick, and remember, these guys can kick like you just wouldn't believe. To allow them to kick somebody in the head when they're down, I said, you know what? This is not going to happen in New York. I went before the legislature, and at that time, they really wanted to pass it. And I said, ladies and gentlemen of the legislature, if this is passed in New York, this is street fighting without a beer bottle. There's going to be bloodshed in New York, and it's going to be on your hands, not mine.
Wow.
They stood up and cheered me. You know, but little did I realize, and it was called no holds barred fighting back then. So we kept it out of New York. 2 years later, I left the commission. I worked for Governor Mario Cuomo. He got voted out. I got thrown out. That's how it works. And nobody really attempted to do anything. No promoters to bring MMA into New York because they knew it had been banned.
Yeah.
And then when the new governor was asked about it in about 1997, Governor George Pataki said, well, what's the stand of the Athletic Commission on it? And they said, well, Commissioner Gordon had banned it back a few years ago. With that, he said, okay, I don't know anything about it, but they banned it. I'll ban it. And he signed it into law.
Yeah. Now that's when it gets hard, because then it takes the government to turn it over. So what ultimately changed? Was it just adding rules to the sport?
Well, yes. And 2 years later, and this is what changed me too. I love combat sports. I love the fighting arts. I just know how much goes into it, how much conditioning goes into it, how much skill goes into it. And when Larry Hazard from New Jersey, he's still the commissioner in New Jersey, when my friend Larry Hazard said to the UFC, you could come into my state if you make these changes and adopt these rules. And they took out the 12 to 6 elbow. They took out the soccer-style kicks to the head. And they made it really less of a street fight and so much more with skill. Yes, there's punching. Yes, there's kicking. There's a lot of grappling. There's tapping out. I have a bunch of grandkids that we always wrestle and we fool around, and I'll put them in a very light little like chokehold where they can't get out of it, and they tap Grandpa, and he lets them go. And that's exactly what they do in the MMA. You get a guy down, you put him in an arm bar. Ronda Rousey has been so great at that. She takes your arm home with her. You can't move. You tap out. It's over.
Randy, let me ask you this. Randy, very interesting. Randy Gordon, former commish, New York Athletic Association, and is boxing host, analyst, Sirius XM. He's with us here on Tiki and Tierney, CBS Sports Radio. I enjoy, on occasion, the old combative interview. I just enjoy that back and forth. It's fun, a little adversarial, but it's all in good fun. I got to tell you, when we booked you, having done my research on you, I thought, going into this chat, that I'd be getting on you a little bit here, because as a cynic, I'm sitting here, I'm saying, okay, what I know about Randy Gordon, back in the mid-'90s to late 90s, he vehemently opposed it. Now he's for it. And I'm saying, all right, who paid him off? I mean, that's just the way my mind works. But I'll tell you, the way you lay it out and the eradication, which I didn't even know about, the 12-6, I honestly didn't even know about that. I mean, it makes you seem noble. I have to be honest. Everything that I thought you would be, it's the complete opposite, man. But I'm sure there are people out there who still say somebody greased the table, somebody lined his pocket, and somebody paid him off. And I'm sure you've heard that a bunch. What do you say to that?
It's funny because on my Facebook page, when the bill was passed, I went on, I said, the monkey is finally off of my back. And many of the guys from the UFC over the years that I've interviewed, I said, do you know that I'm the one who banned it in New York? Or they would even say to me, hey, aren't you the guy who banned it in New York? They all understood why I banned it. They said, you protected us because, they say, we're the ones that are fighting. We're the ones that could deliver the soccer-style kicks or the 12-6 elbows, or we're the ones who could take those vicious punches. You protected us, and we understand where you were coming from. But it's funny. On my Facebook page, I had a few people who said, come on, Randy, you went with the flow.
Yeah, it's human nature.
It was not popular back then, so you went with it.
It's politics.
And then it became popular, so you went with it. And certainly, I guess if you want to look at it like that, but if you look at my entire career, I have never gone with the flow. I've gone with what Randy Gordon believes.
Yeah.
And listen, I've run into a lot of got arguments with promoters. I once was the sportscaster, the color commentator for ESPN, which is actually the cornerstone of my absolute career, because when Governor Cuomo heard this story, Mario Cuomo, he always said, this is the kind of guy I want in my corner. Back in 1982, there was a fighter who was under suspension and fighting, and I told the promoter about it, and the promoter told me, you shut your mouth. And I said to him, shut my mouth? How can I shut my mouth? He's under suspension. He was knocked out 5 days ago, basically carried out of the ring. I'm going to shut my mouth? They said, if you do open your mouth, you're gone. I said, I don't work for you, Mr. Promoter. I work for ESPN.
Which sport? Was this boxing or was this...
Boxing.
Who was the promoter? Was it Don King? Was it somebody we would know?
It was Bob Arum.
Oh, it's Bob Arum. I got you. Okay.
And over the years, we've both moved on, and I've talked to Bob, and I've interviewed Bob, and I became a promoter at one of the Native American casinos, and I put on a lot of his fights. But back then, it was vicious, and I had just gotten an increase from a raise from ESPN, but yet back then, Arum had a lot of influence with ESPN, and got them to take me off the air because I told the truth on the air. So nobody tells me what I can do and what I can't do. I did some things at the commission I'm very proud of, and maybe there was some things that, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Hey, you sound like a stand-up guy, Randy. Yeah. I got to be honest with you.
No, I appreciate it.
But when it came down to it, I looked at this sport. I had no idea what it was.
Yeah. Same here.
It was NHB, no holds barred. It wasn't UFC stuff. And it took years later, and again, I'm the kind of guy, if I see two guys going at it in Penn Station,
Film it.
I'm gonna stand there and watch. Oh, look, this guy's throwing his punch from the other side of the building.
You're analyzing as it's going on. Film it and put it on television.
So, I mean, I enjoy fighting.
Yeah.
I really don't enjoy a good street fight.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Yeah.
But when it's under rules and regulations with referees, trained referees, and so forth, and guys who are in total shape and have all the skill in the world, I will watch everything, Muay Thai, everything.
Let me. We don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
Real quick on this. And Tiki and I were kind of kicking this around yesterday. Obviously, you would want to go to the Garden, much like wrestling with WrestleMania 1 and, of course, the emergence of Hulk Hogan in the early 80s. I mean, it's the Mecca. But when you look at the Garden versus Barclays as the main New York venue, I mean, there's going to be some competition. We got 30 seconds. Which one is going to get the first bite, do you think?
And who is it going to be? Who would you like to see here? Rousey, Weidman's
from
here.
New York?
Oh, God. I really think the Garden is going to probably get it. It's a much more historical building. Who do I want to see there? I want to see New Yorkers like John Jones and Chris Weidman. Those guys will pack the building. Frankie Edgar from Jersey. Those are the guys that will pack the building for the very first fight. I can hardly wait for that night.
You know what? Enjoy chatting with you, man.
Yeah.
Pretty good stuff. Randy Gordon, thank you very much, bud. We'll be following you on Twitter a little bit now, too.
Guys, I follow you too, and thank you so much for having me.